The next morning, Monday, May 13th, I left the tents at first light and walked 2.5 miles through the deep cleft of the western comb to the lip of the icefall. There, acting on instructions radioed up from Guy Cotter at base camp, I scouted for a level area that could serve as a helicopter landing pad. Over the preceding days, Cotter had been doggedly working the satellite phone to arrange a helicopter evacuation from the lower end of the comb so that Beck wouldn't have to descend the treacherous ropes and ladders of the icefall, which would have been difficult and very hazardous with such severely injured hands. Helicopters had landed in the comb previously, in 1973, when an Italian expedition used a pair of them to ferry loads from base camp. It was nevertheless extremely dangerous flying at the limit of the aircraft's range, and one of the Italian machines had crashed on the glacier. In the 23 years since, nobody had attempted to land above the icefall again. Cotter was persistent, however, and thanks to his efforts, the American embassy persuaded the Nepalese army to attempt a helicopter rescue in the comb. Around 8 o'clock Monday morning, as I searched in vain for an acceptable helipad among the jumbled seracs at the lip of the icefall, Cotter's voice crackled over my radio. "The helicopter's on the way, John. He should be there any minute. You better find a place for him to land pretty quickly." Hoping to find level terrain higher on the glacier, I promptly ran into Beck being short-roped down the comb by Athens, Burleson, Gustafsson, Breschers, V. Esters, and the rest of the IMAX crew. Breschers, who had worked around many helicopters during the course of a long and distinguished film career, immediately found a landing pad bordered by 2 gaping crevasses at 19,860 feet. I tied a silk kata to a bamboo one to serve as a wind indicator, while Breschers, using a bottle of red Kool-Aid as dye, marked a giant X in the snow at the center of the landing zone. A few minutes later, Makalu Gao appeared, having been dragged down the glacier on a piece of plastic by a half-dozen Sherpas. A moment after that, we heard the thwack-thwack-thwack of a helicopter's rotors thrashing furiously at the thin air. Piloted by Lieutenant Colonel Madan Khatri Chetri of the Nepalese Army, the olive-drab B-2 Squirrel helicopter, stripped of all unnecessary fuel and equipment, made 2 passes, but on each occasion aborted at the last moment. On Madan's 3rd attempt, however, he settled the Squirrel shakily onto the glacier with its tail hanging over a bottomless crevasse. Keeping the rotors revving at full power, never taking his eyes off the control panel, Madan raised a single finger, indicating that he could take only 1 passenger. At this altitude, any additional weight might cause him to crash while taking off. Because Gao's frostbitten feet had been thawed at Camp 2, he could no longer walk or even stand, so Breschers, Athens, and I agreed that the Taiwanese climber should be the one to go. "Sorry," I yelled to Beck above the scream of the chopper's turbines. "Maybe he'll be able to make a second flight." Beck nodded philosophically. We hoisted Gao into the rear of the helicopter, and the machine labored tentatively into the air. As soon as Madan's skids lifted from the glacier, he nosed the aircraft forward, dropped like a stone over the lip of the icefall, and disappeared into the shadows. A dense silence now filled the comb. 30 minutes later, we were standing around the landing zone, discussing how to get Beck down, when a faint thwack-thwack-thwack-thwack sounded from the valley below. Slowly the noise grew louder and louder, and finally the small green helicopter popped into view. Madan flew a short distance up the comb before bringing the aircraft around, so that its snout pointed downhill. Then, without hesitation, he set the Squirrel down once more on the Kool-Aid crosshatch, and Breschers and Athens hustled Beck aboard. A few seconds later, the helicopter was airborne, flitting past the west shoulder of Everest like a freakish metal dragonfly. An hour later, Beck and Makalu Gao were receiving treatment in a Kathmandu hospital. After the rescue team dispersed, I sat in the snow for a long while by myself, staring at my boots, endeavoring to get a grip on what had happened over the preceding 72 hours. How could things have gone so haywire? How could Andy and Rob and Scott and Doug and Yasuko really be dead? But try as I might, no answers were forthcoming. The magnitude of this calamity was so far beyond anything I'd ever imagined that my brain simply shorted out and went dark. Abandoning my hope of comprehending what had transpired, I shouldered my backpack and headed down into the frozen witchery of the icefall, nervous as a cat, for one last trip through the maze of decaying seracs.